This week, rather than have you go into a bunch of different sites, we'll go through a very quick PowerPoint. There will be some links and a couple of videos. Videos don't do real well over PowerPoint, so I'll leave you to explore those on your own. On Carmen, you will also find this PowerPoint, a PDF of this PowerPoint, and a Word document as a handout if you prefer to take notes while you're listening to the PowerPoint. So here's a basic outline of what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes. Some basic definitions, little tiny bit of history, a couple of the different types of green roofs, their basic anatomy, and the same thing for green walls. So what is a green roof? It's basically a roof with vegetation. Sometimes you hear them called eco roof, or living roof, or vegetated roof, but it's taking a dead space and making it now a vibrant space. It can break up the monotony and it can really reduce the impact of the building. Tad bit of history. One of the first green roofs that we're aware of is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This picture here came right out of Wikipedia from their Open Commons media. You can find sod-covered roofs in Europe, and if you were to click the link, you would find that will take you to several pictures of the different types of houses. The modern roof, as we know it today, first originated in Germany in about 2011. And nowadays, what we're seeing is a lot of governments encouraging green roofs because they have so many mitigating factors from the building's perspective. So there's three basic types of green roofs, although if you go between intensive and extensive, you could have almost an unlimited amount of media, different types of soil types. If we look at an intensive green roof, if you take a look at the media that's here, and that's going to be this layer right here. If we take a look at the media, that's very thick. Intensive green roofs are capable of growing shrubs and even trees. Extensive on the other side are the more common types of green roofs. These are there for stormwater mitigation, and we're really not growing a wide variety of plants, mostly very low growing succulents and ground covers. And then we have the semi-intensive, which is basically anything in between. So the more media you have on there, the better the plants you can grow, the greater diversity of plants that you can grow within these types of gardens. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but here's some basic differences between intensive, semi-intensive, and extensive. And it really has to do with the depth of the media and the types of plants, how much weight it's going to put on the building, and whether you want it to look more like a garden that people are accessing or simply to balance the mitigating forces of the roof. Again, I don't necessarily think that you need to look at everything that's here. Let me move this out of the way a little bit. But this is a chart showing some of the maintenance impact. So if we look at maintenance, it's very high in intensive, much lower on extensive. Don't think that an extensive roof is absolutely no maintenance. At Chadwick, we hire a company to come in once a month to do all the maintenance for it. So it's still a fairly labor intensive type of garden. Take a look at the plants, almost unlimited plants from an intensive to very minimal plants from extensive. Costs, high, medium, and low for intensive, semi, and extensive. So that gives you some ideas here of some of the differences. Same thing here. These are kind of pros and cons of the different types of roofs. So you have a greater diversity of plants on the one side, and maybe not as great a diversity on the other side. But you have a much lighter roof that may not need to be retrofitted to the building. So from an intensive perspective, it's more complex, but you get a greater mitigation of the harmful effects of a building. So you get better stormwater mitigation, whereas an extensive green roof will be a little bit less efficient when it comes to those activities. I pulled this right out of the American Society for Landscape. This is actually, I was standing on top, or however far you can get on whatever the new name for the Sears Tower is in Chicago. I know it has a new name, but in my mind, it shall always be the Sears Tower. So apologies to those of you who might actually know the name. But I'm standing on the Sears Tower and I'm looking down over the rooftops of the city of Chicago. And if you look right here in the middle, you will see a green roof. A lot of cities are now mandating that new buildings have some associated green roof with them. We move on to green walls. And if you look at the structure of a green wall, you're going to find a lot of similarities between how green walls and green roofs interact with the building because you have to deal with the water. So there's always going to be a layer of air between the green wall and the building because you can't have water up against the wall. So you see the studs here will allow airflow behind there. Then you'll notice there's some drainage mats, backing board materials to prevent water from getting through there. A lot of new systems will have drip lines and they'll have irrigation that's running through them. And if you look at the little planting pockets, this is just one style of planting pocket. Almost all of them will have some sort of style of planting pocket so you can put the plants in there. Here's an example of a very unusual green wall. I believe this was in Vancouver when I was out there a few years ago. And you'll notice that this is not just a bunch of succulents and small plants. This one actually had plants like dogwood shrubs, hydrangeas. If you look close over here, here's a juniper. So this one was very unusual. If you look really close right here, you can actually see some of the planting pockets where they put in some annuals. This is a close-up of some of the planting pockets, so you can see where some of these plants are not as successful as others, but if they're not successful, you can simply pop one of these out and pop another plant back in. This is the green wall at Longwood Gardens. This is in their bathroom area. And you can see this is basically inside of what is a greenhouse, so there's plenty of light here. This is an indoor example of a green wall. And you can see, again, it's mostly smaller succulents, shade-tolerant plants because it is inside a building. There are pros and cons to everything we do. The pros, you can lower your energy bills because a lot of the plants are absorbing the heat. So you're lowering your energy bills with a green wall. You get lots and lots of diversity. It's really, really cool. It's an eye-catching aesthetic. You might be lowering your pollution as the plants absorb pollutants from the air. You do have to worry about structural damage. You do have to worry about things being an eyesore, and that's no different from a green roof. They're very heavy. They could cause structural damage if you don't think about those sorts of things. If the plants don't do well, it is potentially an eyesore. And anytime you're putting plants on the buildings, if the plants are not doing well, plants burn very easily, so that could have consequences for fire. The reality is, however, green walls and green roofs right now, the cost benefit analysis is in general, they are worth having on there because you're mitigating the stormwater, you're reducing the heating and cooling costs. It can be anywhere from 20 to 35% depending upon the type of roof, the type of wall, and the general heating and cooling costs for your area. But most cities right now feel that these actually are more beneficial than they are harmful. As always, if you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out.